Bienvenidos y bienvenidas quienes están conectando. Tenemos varios todavía ingresando. Caras conocidas. Hola Diego, David, Ernesto. ¿Cómo están? Súper. Qué rico tenerlos acá en este espacio nuevamente. Acá esperemos un segundito que siguen entrando. Ya somos 20. Qué rico contar con tanta gente hoy en este espacio de relanzamiento del miércoles de liderazgo, al cual muchos de ustedes ya habían asistido y que habíamos suspendido por unos meses. Estamos muy felices de volver a inaugurar o a reinaugurar este espacio. Y qué rico contar con todos ustedes aquí hoy para acompañarnos en la conversación que nos trae Bob Dunham acerca de la generación de valor en el futuro y de cómo crear un futuro con sentido y con valor. Entonces, gracias por estar acá. Vamos a estar conversando en este espacio de miércoles de liderazgo cada 15 días a partir de ahora. Entonces, de una vez agéndense, pónganlo en sus calendarios. Y bienvenidos a las conversaciones. Estaremos mandándoles invitaciones cada 15 días y una agenda con anticipación para que puedan elegir y puedan venir a acompañarnos en estos espacios de conversación donde queremos traer nuevos formatos, nuevas formas de participar, paneles, actividades para que podamos estar conectados como comunidad, quienes ya nos conocemos y hacemos parte del liderazgo generativo.
No.
Y también traer espacios para las personas que no nos conocen, para poder dar a conocer el liderazgo generativo y todo lo que él trae para la generación de futuro y de valor a nivel individual y a nivel organizacional. Entonces, bienvenidos. Los invito a abrir sus cámaras quienes se sientan cómodos haciéndolo. Y nada, sin más preámbulos, le doy la palabra a Bob para que nos contextualice y le dé inicio a esta conversación. Gracias, Bob, por estar acá.
Okay, so let's begin. And my invitation is that we make this a conversation, not just a presentation. So the conversation brings questions to us. And the topic of the questions, we have a title for this session, but the topic of these questions is you, because we're talking about leadership. And leadership is not some abstract topic. It's something that people do. So if you're interested in leadership, you're interested in what leaders do and what you do that's leader-like. But we have a big problem. What is leadership? What is the understanding of leadership that's out there in the world and that you live with, for example? Because I'm going to claim in our exploration here that leadership is misunderstood by most people. Today, because we really don't understand what it is. And so, since it's about you and me, and it's about real people in real action, one of the things we've learned in our over 40 years of working and refining and evolving a powerful approach to leadership called generative leadership is that it's not only about people, it's about the full body contact sport of people being involved with other people in conversation, in action, in breakdowns, and all these challenges. So since it's about people, I'm going to invite us to connect as people. If your camera's off and you can turn it on, join us so that, because one of the requirements for leadership is that you have to be present. And so if you're going to practice a little leadership here with us, then let's connect. So how do we connect? First of all, let's wave. Give me high tens. let's say hi to each other. Let's like show up in the conversation. And I'm going to ask you to lean into the camera, and I want you to get eye contact with somebody and actually experience whether you're connected or not. Because one of the big breakdowns in the world of leadership, and that translates to the work we do as coaches and consultants, is not everybody knows how to connect. So take a deep breath. Thank whoever it was you were giving your connection attention to. And oh my God, I have Zoom trying to talk to me. So you see, we're surrounded by machines. And this is a problem. Because machines are not just things. Machines are a way of thinking. And the culture that we live in today has a lot of issues. And a lot of them stem from our research from over 4 decades is in our misunderstanding of some very important fundamental questions. What is a human being? Do you really know what a human being is? Kind of hard to be a leader if you don't know what a human being is. And if you say you do know what a human being is, well, if you go to companies, they have an answer to what is a human being. They call it human resources. Is that a very powerful answer? Are you a resource? I'm not. I'm a person. So there's some gaps here in our common sense that we want to explore a little bit. But Elsa, where should we go in this conversation? What are the questions you think would be most provocative for our audience today?
Gracias por incluirme, Bob. Voy a hablar en español. Parte de lo que les escribía ahí hace un ratico en el chat es que quienes quieran utilizar la traducción simultánea, abajo en sus botones de Zoom encuentran el canal de inglés y el canal español, o se pueden quedar en el audio original para participar. Y quienes quieran participar también en su debido momento, pueden hablar también en el idioma en el cual se sientan más cómodos, que Andrés, la voz Novoa, está aquí detrás acompañándonos en la traducción. Bob, yo creo que empecemos por la pregunta de qué es un futuro valioso, qué es un futuro de valor y de sentido, y cómo aterrizamos eso y qué quiere decir dentro del liderazgo generativo.
Beautiful, beautiful question. What is a valuable future? And the common sense of our culture is to think about content. So if you're asked what is a valuable future, you'll say, well, it's got this and that, it's got money and it's got freedom. And it's like you wind up with a list of things. But what we've learned in our over 4 decades of exploring leadership and exploring how human beings produce action together is it's not about understanding content. It's about creating a context to be even able to understand the question and what categories are worth thinking with. So when you say, what is a valuable future? The question in our generative tradition is not to say, well, it's this content and that content. It's actually starts with the question, well, what is the future? And what is value? And this is not an abstract intellectual conversation. This is super practical because we use language like we think we know what it means. And the future, for example, is a word. But what does the future mean to you? And I'm asking the questions here. Why don't you, if you have something to write with, write down your answer to the question. What is the future? Because if we don't know what it is, how are we going to create it? And if our answer is not designed to be actionable, it's only abstract in theory, it's not very useful. So what would be an actual, practical, actionable answer to what is the future? And these are the kind of questions we found that over our 40 years of research, we had to answer these questions because people were wandering around in stories about the future is this, the future is that, and didn't even know what a future was. So let me give you a preview, because this is something we could take a lot of time to unpack and taste. But the future, if your answer of the future is this something later, that's not where the future lives. The future is now. There is no something later. There's only now. And so how does the future show up now? It's your story, because language has the possibility to talk about something that doesn't exist. And so our future is our story. But our story of the future is super important because it tells us where we're going to go if we're committed to a particular future. It gives us an orientation, and often that orientation is contraction or worry versus expansion. Then this story of the future is super important. But you see, by making it a story, we've made it practical. We've made it accessible. And what is your story of the future? Who are you going to be in 10 years? And if you don't have that story, then you're probably not going anywhere. Or you're going somewhere that's only a year down the road. And the problem with the year down the road, all the research has shown with the story of the year down the road, it tends to be very much like the last year with a little bit of. And so if you want to create a bigger, more powerful future, we need to have stories that have a longer horizon. And this turns out to be an important finding from a lot of work with simulations. And so I'm asking the question seriously. What if you could design your future and who you're going to be in it as a clarification of what you're going to spend your time and attention and focus on that will help you go forward into that future? I find that most people, even leaders, don't live in the future much because they're busy, their calendar's full, and all they have time for is today and next week. What's your relationship with the future? Is it big? Is it valuable? And if not, then there's a chance to begin to explore that, because the future story shapes what you do now. If we make it what we call generative, something that we're committed to and taking action with. So that's an example of identifying what we would call a blind spot in our culture. What is the blind spot? The full technical term of that is a cognitive blind spot. It doesn't mean that you're not seeing visually. It means that your understanding, your ability to think is not aware of something. And so we call that a blind spot. When you're blind to something, it doesn't exist for you. And we're going to be very practical here in our conversation. If something doesn't exist for you, you have no choice of what to do about it. So blindness is a very important part of our world. It's a very important part of being human. We don't see the world. We don't see what's out there. We only see what we're structured to see. And our structure comes from the past. So if we're going to create a new future, we have to understand that our tendency, if we're not paying attention, is to create a future that repeats the past, because that's what we know. How good are you at creating a new future, a more valuable future? This is actually one of the questions we take seriously in our program, because it's actually the function of leadership. It's actually the function of the executive role in organizations. Executives are not simply managers who are trying to perform better or do more. Executives have to design a path to the future, but it's not just an executive story. All of us are living a life with the future. How are we doing here? Is this making sense so far? Hello, are you seeing the relevance here? And so this is an example. If I'm sounding a little strange or weird here, this is an example of our cultural blindness. We're not having the right conversations. We're not having the right questions. We're not having the right perspectives to really be effective. And so the word leader for many people just refers to somebody with a title. But we all know people with a title that we don't respect as leaders, or someone who's an expert. But because you're an expert doesn't mean that anybody follows you, or because you have power and authority. We have lots of people with power and authority that people do not organize themselves to follow. So what is leadership? It's something about this conversation of the future. And Elsa, you asked a question about value. And so what is value? You're a practitioner. What has been your experience with the question of what is value?
Estaba preparada para hacerte la pregunta, pero no para responderla, pero aquí vamos. Porque yo creo que así como estamos ciegos a qué es el futuro y a que el futuro es hoy y no mañana, tenemos definiciones como preconcebidas de valor, de lo que es generar valor, muy asociado a los resultados, al dinero, como a los indicadores cuantitativos del mundo moderno. Pero creo que esta es la invitación a preguntarnos qué es valioso para cada uno, ¿no? ¿Cómo generamos valor a otros a través de lo que traemos y lo que ofrecemos al mundo y que queremos poner o diseñar en nuestro futuro? Y también cómo eso es valioso para nosotros mismos, para nuestra propia concepción de qué queremos en nuestro futuro y en el futuro del mundo y de nosotros. Entonces, sí, es como más que definir qué es valor, creo que la invitación que quisiera hacer es como a preguntarnos qué es valioso para cada uno y qué es aquello que queremos ver en nuestro futuro para poder empezar ese diseño y esa posición activa de generar un futuro desde nosotros y para otros. No sé si haya alguien que quiera también como conversar y poner qué interpreta como valor, Bob. Tal vez darle un poquito de voz a estas caras que tenemos aquí mirándonos atentamente. ¿Hay alguien que quiera preguntar o incluir algo?
Of course, I have a Adriana. Oh, yeah. Hi. Hola.
Hola Bob, ¿cómo estás? Qué
Muy
gusto
bien.
verte. Hola a todos los que nos están acompañando. Em, Bob, yo tengo como dos reflexiones. Una un poquito sofisticada, generativa, diría yo, y es esta de, he ido comprendiendo que el valor es poner mis dones, mis habilidades al servicio de la humanidad y que ese servicio que presto, lo que hago, lo que soy, me genera satisfacción, me genera alegría, me genera bienestar, me genera sentido. Y la segunda tiene que ver con una comprensión de, y el futuro no tiene sentido si no está presente mi valor. Es como las dos cosas eh, que estaba aquí reflexionando mientras te escuchaba.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Well, thank you for that. Let me offer our generative perspective, because the power of generative leadership, that was part of the topic today. The power of generative leadership is we bring interpretations that reveal the world in a new way and open actions that were not available without those eyes. And so value is super, super practical. Business exists to produce value and satisfaction. Any business that can't produce value and satisfaction will disappear. Any client that you don't produce value and satisfaction for, they will disappear. Any relationship that doesn't have value and satisfaction in it will disappear. And so it's a very fundamental question, a very important question about action. Now, one of the problems we have in our culture, when we ask a question like, what is value? There's lots of answers. You know, this is the answer, and that's an answer. And so we have learned that there is a criteria for the answer we want as a leader, as a coach, as a consultant, of someone who is trying to create a valuable future with other people. And we need to take the question seriously. What is value and where does it come from? Otherwise, we're dancing around with the common sense answers. What are the common sense answers? They are default answers. And when people say, well, the value is the price of buying something, well, the price changed tomorrow, so where's the value? And Adriana, let me ask you a question. Are you interested in buying a $25 million yacht?
No,
No? But it's worth $25 million.
no me interesa.
You don't value the yacht that's $25
No
million?
tengo en dónde aparcarlo.
Oh my God. Well, I'm going to make it harder for you. What if I gave you $25 million? Would you want to spend it on a yacht?
No,
No?
prefiero en otras cosas.
Okay. Then the question here is, where's the value? Who is a $25 million yacht valuable for? And I'm going to share with you. So people are out there doing work and making offers, and companies have strategies. But if we don't understand what value is, we can work hard, because we not only have this common sense that everything is seen as machines. It's like we don't think about questions like what is value, because people tell us what to do, whether it's successful or not. So value, Adriana just gave us the example. Value is not in the yacht. It's not in the thing you buy. It's in Adriana. The value is a judgment that she makes of what would open my future. And what she values, what she commits to, what she puts resources into, that's value for her. Value exists in people, not in things. And when we do coaching and consulting with our clients, we want to listen for what's valuable to them. And mostly, people don't know what's valuable to them, because our culture is all about work hard, get things done. And so with this question, I'm going to give a clear answer here to what is value. Hang on a second. Let me do it this way. I'm not going to use the PowerPoint afterward. Then one of our discoveries in our tradition of over 40 years of what makes action action and what makes a human being has two fundamental aspects. action is shaped by commitment. If you're not committed to do something, you don't do it. So action's not just the movement, it has to be preceded by commitment. Where does the commitment come from? What does a leader do to produce commitment with people? It has to happen in conversations. And the generative skill of the leader is conversations that produce clarity and commitment. And commitment is not a yes. You can say yes and be absolutely not committed. And all of a sudden we see, oh, and this showed up for us in our journey. All of a sudden we need to say, we need to learn to listen. It's not in the words. The commitment's not in the words. It's inside the people. And this is one of the huge blind spots of our culture. We translate everything into mechanical terms of external action and movement outside and miss the source of all action, which is inside people. Leaders who have a natural feel for guiding people are effective. Leaders that are just mechanical and pushing for the numbers, they're losing the whole point, and there's a huge waste. Second aspect of being human is the internal experience of care. We care about things, and care is a huge motivating full body experience that when you care about something, you are energized, you are attracted to it. It's meaningful for you. You want to take care of something. And commitment without care is simply obligation. Now, why am I going to these internal states? One is to see that the secret we've learned about leadership that has to be learned, and it's not part of the common sense. So that's why it takes learning and why it's so valuable for coaches and consultants to bring to their clients, because clients are not educated to these aspects. But if we look at value, for example, and we looked at the $25 million yacht and we said, if you don't care about the yacht, it doesn't have value for you. It has a zero value for Adriana. And so if somebody says there's a really valuable outcome here and you don't care about it, it's not valuable to you. Does that make sense? Hello? This is not theory.
Totalmente.
Very good. This is not theory. This is where value comes from. If you don't care about something, it has no value. And what is a business designed for? To create value. But we don't pay attention to what people care about. We pay attention to the product and the features and the benefits and the price and the But what fundamentally drives value of an offer, including our coaching and consulting and leadership, is that people care about the future that you are creating with the offer. The offer is a commitment to produce a piece of the future. The care is what produces the value. Satisfaction is the same. If you don't care about something, it's not satisfying. So think of something in your life right now that you are super satisfied about. Could be in relationship, could be in career, could be in meaning, contribution, and you will see that you care deeply about something that is giving you that satisfaction. And now think of something that you are having to deal with in your life. Maybe it's part of your job or what's going on in your life that's not satisfying. It's just kind of flat, and you'll find it's not something you care about except to have a problem solved. And this now reveals the human dimension that is crucial for leadership. If you want to produce a great team, we need to have people care. And when they don't care, we have breakdowns. So let me share with you. Yeah, I think I'll use this one. Hang on. I'm fighting with my computer. So let me just share some clarifications here. So I started with blindness. We think, from our experience of over 40 years now, that leadership is a blind spot. If we have blind, become aware of something to see it. Now, this is not theoretical. This is super practical. In order to be a physician, you need to see what physicians see. In order to be an architect, you have to see what architects see. In order to be a chef, you have to see what chefs see. You need to know what to pay attention to. Being a lawyer or anything, or whatever your work is, people need to know what to pay attention to. And if they're not aware of what to pay attention to, they have a blind spot. They couldn't do the job. And yet leadership, coaching leaders, consulting to leaders is the same. You have to see and pay attention to certain things. And we call that skill being an observer. Being able to pay attention to the right things. And it's not obvious, and the common sense, just like you need to go to medical school, we have found that to really meet professional standards for leadership, you have to be trained in what to pay attention to, because it's not part of the common sense. It also requires certain actions. To be a physician, you have to be able to take certain actions. To be an architect, you have to be able to take certain actions. To be a chef, you have to be able to take certain actions. Leadership, coaching leaders, consulting to leaders, it's the same. They have actions, and we've been studying what these are for 40 years. And when you have the right observer and the right action, you produce results. That's the effective doctor, the effective chef, the effective architect, and the effective leader. But it's not enough to know the actions. You have to have a body that can do it. What we found is most people learn leadership as models and concepts. They actually don't learn it as a performance art. Leadership is a performance art. Coaching leaders is a performance art. You have to be able to do it. And it's not always easy. How many of you play the piano? Anybody play the piano? We have a non-piano group here. Okay. Well, if it mattered to you, if you really wanted to play piano, do you think you could do it in a weekend workshop? You'd have to practice, right? Exactly. Then why do we teach leadership with weekend workshops? When it's a full profession that needs to have its clarity of practices and its support for practicing. And that's one of the key blind spots that we've discovered over the years. And so here's what we've discovered is about building blocks that need to be revealed in the blindness of our culture. This is a picture of the DNA strand. DNA is composed of only 4 nucleotides. That's what they call them, nucleotides. But with only those 4 components, every living thing is manifested. This is amazing. If you know 4 things, you can create living things, including us, human beings. And so we have found in our study of generative leadership, similarly, that there are complex skills that effective leaders and coaches of leaders need to know. We have body skills, listening, centering, entering, connection. We have fundamental skills of all kinds of how to have conversations that produce commitment and clarify perspectives and produce alignment. We have the crucial skills of management, teams and projects and producing results. We have design conversations, and we have the senior skills of leadership, strategy, power, politics. There's a lot to learn, but we've also found that they are built on certain fundamental building blocks, just like DNA. Our question in generative leadership that produces the power of the way is that we have to be able to connect, to observe for value, to create the future stories that people are living in. And we need to be able to produce a new observer, new actor for new results. And then we are in value creating. So if we look at leadership with this question, what is leadership? What do we see? We see people interacting with people. Very simple. As a result of those interactions, actions are taken and results are produced. Pretty straightforward. But then if we want new results, we have to have new interactions that will produce new actions and new results. Now we're getting closer. What are those interactions of leadership? And what we have found is that's the key question. And not only what is leadership, but what is action and even what is a human being are relevant questions, because our common sense doesn't seem to be producing very many competent leaders. And so we're looking for answers that are not theoretical, are not abstract, but are answers of what actions do leaders take? What is action? What are the actions of a human being that are physically you're able to see, to do, to learn, that produce desired results? And so we have come up with, in our 40 years of research, this understanding of how commitment shapes action that leads to results. So how do you shape commitment? Do it in conversations. There you go. There was some leadership going on. And so everybody take a deep breath. I'm going to make a big claim here about the power of generative leadership. What we have discovered in our 40 years of research is that all results come from prior conversations. All of them. The good ones, the bad ones, the so-so ones. They come from conversations we have, conversations we don't have, conversations we do well, and conversations we do poorly. And so this is the domain of leadership. This is the domain of coaching. This is a domain of human interaction. And how do you make a commitment in conversations? Well, if I ask you to do something, that's a committed act. If you say yes, you've made a commitment. If you say no, you've made a commitment. Either way, we are clear about the future that's going to show up. And if you don't answer, because ghosting apparently is a new phenomena on the internet, after a while I say, oh, that's your answer to my request, is a no answer, non-answer. And so you see that this is called the anatomy of action. This is a blind spot in our culture. Most people, and I was not aware of any of this in my early career. I ran into a workshop that was about conversations for action, and this was a revelation. It's since been 40 years of testing, and my experience of it was that when I was exposed to this, I was in an organization that was it was a Silicon Valley computer company, 5,000 employees, and they'd had a successful product, but had not gotten a new product out the door for 2.5 years. And somehow I wind up being a program manager who's supposed to reorganize 250 engineers 22 managers working on 35 products, and I'd never done it before. And I didn't know how to do the job. But when I was introduced to this framework, that results come from action, action comes from conversation, I began to have new conversations. We produced a turnaround, and we delivered all 35 products on time, on budget in 6 months. And that's what convinced me that this is an important framework. And so this is not the only, and again, we're giving you a new paradigm that this will, if you test it and practice it, you'll begin to see that this is a way to reveal the world, that everybody's walking around in commitment that shapes their actions. Everybody's walking around in conversations that open action or not, that reveal possibility or not, that create value or not. That's where it comes from, human action. And we found that as part of that care, what I was talking about before, is a fundamental part of action. It's not simply an internal emotional state. It shapes what matters to you. And as I said before, care is fundamental to value, to satisfaction, and to meaning. If someone says this is a very meaningful outcome and you don't care about it, it doesn't have meaning for you. And so here we have this incredible new understanding of what action is. This is an example of our discoveries in the generative leadership learning path for the last 40 years, that we have found the common sense answers to what is action don't reveal these fundamental, unavoidable, essential elements. And when you reveal, you can listen for commitments, you can make commitments, and they actually produce the result that I experienced in my Silicon Valley day. So how do you produce a valuable future? Let me go back to the question that started this story I'm sharing with you. You see, we need to know what the future is. It's a story. And it's a story that when we see it's a story, rather than a reality, we can become the author of the story rather than the victim of the story. That's what leaders do. They change the story. And if you see any effective leader, you will see the stories that they're creating, the conversations they're having that produce results. Then, if we're going to create a valuable future, we have to have a story of value. And that value is not some abstract number that we put on things. It's an internal emotional experience of people. That's when you see leadership work, is people care. And one of the things we learned over the years is to produce effective teams, they need to share their care about their work. Teams that don't care about their work are not high-performing teams. And so over and over and over again, in our journey of exploring these what questions of what is action, what is a human being, what is value, we found that we came back to it's human beings interacting with other human beings that produce the results, that produce the conversations, that produce the commitment, that produce the care, and that's where the results come from. When leaders who are technical experts, who only see the mechanics of action, understand the human dimension, it opens up a whole world of possibilities. And let me give you some examples. My first example was creating this turnaround in Silicon Valley in 6 months, even as a beginner. I then went on to do consulting for 5 years using this approach. And one of the projects we did in 6 months, using this framework of seeing the world of action as the conversations that were happening and not happening, we were able to help one of the departments of a utility in Canada that had a $60 million annual budget. We helped them to reduce their budget by $10 million by changing the conversations. And I'm very proud of that result because no one got fired. We didn't do it by firing. We did it by identifying the missing conversations, the wasteful conversations, the value-producing conversations, and it worked. And so with that example of Silicon Valley, of that consulting project and many other successful projects, that's what led me to found the Institute for Generative Leadership. I said, this is so good. We need to share this with the world. And we've been doing it now for many, many years. And we have a number of our students and graduates here on this call. Now, the fact that we have brought to illumination these essential elements, these essential actions, that's fantastic. Then people think, well, that should be easy, right, Bob? It's like buying an app, right? You should just, buy the t-shirt and you're going to make everything work. No, the fact that you see the new actions doesn't mean your body is skillful with them yet. The leadership conversations are as sophisticated and challenging as becoming a physician or learning to play the piano. It takes practice. Some people in our culture today say, that's too much effort. That's too hard. I don't want to spend all that time. Well, you have a choice. You can drift in the trajectory of your life, or you can spend some of your time looking for the deep questions, the deep answers that will transform your capacity. And if you practice over time, you will build your muscle of producing new impact in the world. One of our graduates is an example recently, we have many examples, but Marité Duarte took her passion as a leader from our program and said, I've discovered something missing in the world, that people over the age of 50 are considered old, obsolete, and expendable. And she said, no. People over 50 have a lot to give, and they're a market, and they should be celebrated and enhanced. She has now launched in Peru an association called the Silver Experience that is creating a whole new set of conversations around activating people over the age of 50 to take advantage of the value they have. So it wasn't just business outcomes that our discipline deals with. It's changing conversations that change the future, that change the actions of people and change the world. It works in the business, it works in the social space, and it works in the personal space. How are we doing? You following so far? So that's our invitation. That's what these evenings are about. Every 2 weeks, we're going to have a Wednesday evening conversation, and we're going to unpack something. We'll have, as Elsa said, a panel discussion or a case study or a key distinction. But the reason we're doing this is we understand the power of this generative point of view. What is it to be generative? It's to have choice where before you didn't have choice. To be able to take action that produces the results you want where you weren't able to do that before. And when you learn how to do that, you are empowered to be a coach and a consultant and a leader that can help others do that and build teams and build organizations and build value in the world. So with that, I've done my invitation. What do I invite you to take from this conversation? First of all, I'll invite you to take the awareness of blindness, that the world you see is not the only world that's possible. There are infinite worlds available to us, and we need to learn to see beyond what we have learned to see so far. There are new ways to see. Sometimes we call that a paradigm shift or even a transformation. Generative leadership is one of these new leading edge, new paradigms that enable new actions and new results. For you, if you have a chance to write something down, I'm going to give you 3 questions that I'm going to invite you to think about that will be provocative and perhaps powerful for you. And they are the questions of leadership. The first question is the source of value, satisfaction, and meaning. And the question is, what do you care about? What do you care about, really, most deeply? Because when you find that, you will have a path open for creating a meaningful, good life. And if you're not clear about that, you're probably working hard, doing a lot, but there's something missing. Something deep and important is missing for you. Now, this is not a quiz. Thinking about it's not going to come up with the right answer. For most people, this takes 6 to 12 months of exploration because our culture has not taught us to pay attention to it. It's actually considered personal and selfish. But I think it's a tragedy we don't teach our kids to respect what they care about, because that's their source of aliveness, their capacity for action, their passion that they can take to the world. Second question for you. It's not enough to care. It's not enough to be clear about your care. You don't get value, satisfaction, and meaning unless you take care of what you care about. And so the second question for you is, if you do know your care, are you taking care of it? Another tragedy of our culture is people live in a story of, well, I have a job and I can't afford to do what I care about or think about it or spend time on it. Maybe I'll get to it when I retire. And surveys have been done of people over 65, and their biggest regret is they didn't take more action on behalf of what really mattered to them. They got trapped in a trajectory of security and waiting to grow old and retire. Third question. And you see, this is generative. It's asking you to the final question. What new actions do you see you can take to clarify your care and to take care of that care? And you will see when you are in that as a beginner, what will be provoked is all the reasons why you can't, all the reasons why it's hard, all the reasons why it doesn't fit in my life. And that's part of the journey, is just to keep the question open, to keep the exploration open. Because the more you live with it, the more you live with what matters to you, the more it will become available for your choices in your life. It doesn't mean you need to give up your life and replace it, but it does mean you can transform yourself in it. And that's the invitation. That's the human foundation of action. And then that slide I showed you with 5 levels of leadership, then those are all conversational skills, thinking skills, imagination skills, illumination skills, leadership, coaching skills. When you have connection to your commitment and your care, they become valuable. And so with that, I just want to announce a couple of things. I'll let Elsa provide the details. We have an event called The Summit, Ring the Bell, September 6th and 7th in Bogota, Colombia. And I'll be there along with a whole set of international speakers. And it's about leadership. It's about creating a 2-day event to really be with people who are serious about this question: how do we create the future? That's what that is going to be about. And we're going to have a chance to explore case studies. We're going to give more presentations of how it's done. We're going to have experiences and a chance to meet other people who are serious at that level about leadership, coaching, and consulting. So you're invited to Bogota, and the website. Can you put the website address in the chat so you can check it out? Hope to see you there. And we also have in September, we'll be launching our next generative leadership consulting program. And if what I have begun to open for you has intrigued you, and you can smell the sense of, if I can see with new eyes, if I can move with new skills, if I can help other people see with new eyes and move with new skills, I could make more valuable offers in the world, and I might even be able to produce a good life. That's what generative leadership is about. So you're invited to explore our our program starting up. And then we have other exciting things coming. So Elsa, please, I'm going to let you wrap us up tonight. Thank you.
Gracias Bob por la conversación de hoy. Creo que fue una conversación con mucho contenido, como un mar de contenido y con una profundidad no tan alta porque solo teníamos una hora para conversar con ustedes. Pero así lo diseñamos. La intención es poder mostrarles un poco aquello de lo que quisiéramos conversar en estos miércoles de liderazgo, ir trayendo los diferentes temas, experiencias, resultados y que podamos ir entre todos construyendo la conversación y explorando este camino del liderazgo generativo a nivel individual, a nivel de líderes, a nivel de coaches y consultores. Entonces, bienvenidos a la conversación y a mantenerse en contacto. Quienes no estén registrados para que les lleguen las invitaciones a sus correos, ya les dejamos aquí el link para que se registren y puedan mantenerse en contacto. Y la próxima ocasión, que no es la semana entrante, sino en 15 días, vamos a hablar precisamente del programa nuevo para líderes. Vamos a tener a Lina Correa, quien va a estar dirigiendo el programa, manejando la conversación y trayéndonos un poco de cuál es la mirada, para qué, para quiénes, qué hay en ese programa, para que podamos también empezar a generar espacios para líderes especialmente y no solo para coaches y consultores. Entonces están todos bienvenidos a participar. Ojalá puedan unirse y les llegarán las invitaciones. Ya el tiempo se acabó. Quiero darles las gracias y también las gracias a quienes han puesto comentarios en el chat, a Gloria, a Vivian, bueno, hay varios de ustedes que han participado, Adriana, por tus ejemplos, gracias. Y a invitarlos a que lo sigan haciendo. Ojalá nos puedan dejar aquí en el chat una palabrita o dos de qué se llevan de hoy, de qué se llevan de este espacio y que puedan seguir acompañándonos en los miércoles de liderazgo y ojalá en otros espacios. Bienvenidos todos al Summit. Ya hay varios aquí que están montados en la ola y que ya hacen parte de quienes están inscritos. Los invitamos a todos los demás a explorar, a mirar, a ver si es para ustedes y acompañarnos en esta maravillosa ocasión de podernos ver en persona, en comunidad y poder estar con Bob y con los demás speakers juntos. Listo, ahí se llevan sus preguntas. Son para ustedes, para que las exploren, para que las profundicen y ojalá podamos seguir acompañándonos en esa exploración de qué es valor, qué es futuro y cómo podemos construir ese futuro valioso y con sentido para nosotros y para otros. Gracias a todos. Pedro, levantaste tu mano, pero creo que fue al despedirte.
Chao, chao, gracias.
Gracias.
Chao.